Hello, my name is Alma Sotelo, and this is for Info 5810. We are in spring semester in 2021, and this is my midterm. So, what have we learned so far? And this has been a really an enjoyable class. This presentation is a it's it it applies what we learned so far in modules 1 through 4, assignments 1 through 3. It applies what we most recently learned in module 4, where we start to learn about knowledge discovery process and the different models. And throughout this semester, we all chose a data set to continue elaborating and trying these different topics, or trying to implement these different topics with. So for me, it was the City of Charlotte's 2018 city employee salaries. So that's what we will be doing today. We'll be discussing the model and following it loosely throughout the agenda to reach the same talking points for it, which are the data set, data cleaning, data analysis, and overall a conclusion. So for the knowledge discovery process, we need to understand, we need to know something about what the data is. And so, like I said, we'll be loosely following the cross-industry standard process for data mining model, which has 6 steps: business understanding, data preparation, modeling, evaluation, and deployment. And so we'll go through those steps throughout this presentation. And this model is one of the leading industrial models, and actually had 5 steps before IBM, which then a 6th step was added. So for our business understanding, here are some of the basics. Like I said, this data set is the state employee salaries March 2018 from the city of Charlotte. That link is the source, and a brief description was given. Business understanding goes a little bit deeper, though. It's understanding what are the objectives of performing a data analysis, what are their needs, what is it trying to achieve. And so there's a few goals that this data analysis tries to achieve, which are the data needs to be easy to navigate through and provide summarization of averages, minimum, maximums. We needed to provide counts and just present a visual summarization. And one thing that we need to keep in mind is we need transparency with how much we're budgeting for each unit and the departments within that unit. And so you'll see here the topics of using table name ranges, lookups, pivot tables are going to be used to support these goals for the business understanding. Now, the second step in the model cross-industry standard process for data mining is understanding the data set. So the data that we provide that was provided is pretty standard. It includes the name, the unit, the department within the unit, the job title, the annual and hourly rate, full-time versus part-time, regular versus temp, and the FID number. And there is no function to it. It's just raw data. So given this information, now that we know what we're working with, we can begin to do some of the cleaning to kind of simplify and make clear what is the data. And so the very first thing I did was insert a table with a nice table style, and I let the table know that the first row of 7,455 rows has a header, is the header. So that provides us some easy filtering if we were to click on the squares to the far right. And then the next thing I did was I moved the FID number to the first column, or column B, the first column of the table, to make it easier for me to create a lookup in which will be shown on a different slide. And also I separated the first name from the last name. I wanted to keep those separated just because it's hard to see what the person's name is when you just see a combination of letters. And so I used the columns to split those. And then I added currency to annual and hourly rate, and I also decided to remove the change on both of those, so it's a clear summarization. It's rounded and made easier to understand. So the fun part is the data analysis, which is there to support the goals or achieve the goals. And so, and when for this, I created a dashboard like tab where users can search for the employee using the FID search cell, and what will show up to the far right is the first and last name using VLOOKUP, where it says root. And then I did a count if for city employees. So now we know that we have 7,454 Charlotte City employees, what their average annual rate looks like, what their average hourly rate looks like, some max and minimum formulas in there to show us what the highest annual rate is and lowest, and the same thing for the hourly rate. And what I really like is this orange pivot table and this green pivot table, and I organized this to show the highest value and decrease. Same thing here, and what this does is it provides the sum of annual rates within a unit. So we see here that the police unit has the highest sum of annual rates. And then on this side, I wanted to show who has the highest average annual rate, which differs from the sum of annual rates. And you see here that the attorney unit has the highest. And I also wanted to see, well, if it clearly displays on the pivot chart that the police department has the highest sum of annual rates, I could see how many employees work within that unit. And then if I wanted to see how many employees worked under the attorney unit, I could see it down here as well. And let's see, so these pivot charts display and nicely provide a visual for this information. And here I wanted to see who earns the top hourly rate and what their annual rate is. And I wanted to know what the FID number was. So if I wanted to, or if the user wanted to, they could search who that person is and they'd receive their first and last name. And the same thing, I wanted to search who earns the least for the hourly rate and annual rate, and I could search their FID here. And most of these are mayor and city council employees, which you can see here have the lowest annual rate. So you can start to draw connections between the information by using the search cell, and also seeing these charts and, knowing how many employees actually work under that unit. So that's part of our data analysis. And like I said, I wanted to make sure that the data is easy to filter through. So I added slicers to the table to easily target a unit within it and see if they're full-time versus part-time. And this one's a really fun pivot chart where it shows you the unit, but then you get to see all of the departments that are under that unit, and you get to see a sum of their annual rates, and then how many employees are under that department, which is great. So we know for administrative services, the sum is 972,103. And there's 17 employees, but right underneath that, the executives, earned close to that and have a much smaller employee count. So that's good information to quickly take a glance at. And with the slicer, you can target any unit with and it's organized in alphabetical order, so you would just use the scroll bar to go further down to see the other ones. And of course, we wanted to include a descriptive statistics table for the annual rates, which is in this case a currency, and it provides really quick information without having to use any of the functions or formulas to get. So for example, the sum of all of the city employees' annual rates amounts to this, and some really quick maximum and minimums and the total accounts, which is still the number of employees, 7,454. And if I wanted to graph this information would be very useful. But for the sake of my goals, I felt that having the table was useful enough. And in this data set, they did not include date or time, but I did name my table as main to easily reference it when doing my formulas. And a lot of these were implemented. They were discussed throughout the presentation. Unfortunately, like I said, there was no date or time provided by the data set, and given the fact that it's 7,454 employees, it would have been very difficult to integrate it into create it and then integrate it. And so I did not use any histograms for this presentation, although I did do it for the assignments. And that is basically a summarization of modules 1 through 4, and loosely following the cross-industry standard process for data mining. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you for watching.